All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Potential Project. I'm your host, Sean Calhoun, and if you're here, it's because you're ready to reduce stress, burn stubborn fat, and get your body working with you instead of against you. On this podcast, we're all about simple, no BS strategies for fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle. This way, you can feel strong, confident, and in control. I'll give you the tools, mindset shifts, and habits to help you look and feel your best without spending hours in the gym or stressing over every single meal. Now, let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Potential Project. And it's been quite a while since I've had a guest on, and I'm super excited to share with you Ed's story. But he's got a lot to go over. We connected from a mutual friend, and immediately when we started talking, we kind of decided that this would be a great episode to give to the world and to share Ed's story and bring it to you guys. So I'm going to let Ed do all the talking about himself, but without further ado, guys, Ed Lubowicki, and I'm super excited to have you on today, man. How's it going?
Yeah, Sean, awesome. Well, and congrats, first of all, more than 100 episodes. You've been crushing it. I love it. You're doing it. This is great stuff. And our last few conversations have been incredible. So happy to bring this on to this format. This is cool.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And that's how I've done, podcasts in the past with friends or mutual friends, where it's just like, you have such a deep connection in a conversation, and what you've been sharing with me not only hit home with my personal life, it was applicable in my eyes to many of the people that we choose to serve in this world. So I guess let's start by just sharing your story a little bit so that the people can understand who you are, where you're coming from, and what got you into this world. So let's first kind of introduce yourself and what you do and how you got into this.
Yeah, for sure. And Sean, our previous conversations, I think not a lot of people prioritize that enough, those vulnerable, deeper conversations. So it's great even doing that, and then being able to talk about it in this format kind of helps build that narrative that it's okay to talk about those things. And yeah, for me, similar to your story, like I played lacrosse my whole life, bunch of other sports, but lacrosse is always the main one. Was lucky enough to play at Notre Dame through college, and learned a lot about myself through that experience. It was always like the main thing. And moving into the corporate world, I joined Deloitte and Touche, this massive consulting company. And whether I knew it or not, a lot of what I learned in sport and the structure of sport were immediately like swept under my legs. So as I was working my way through the corporate world, I was in cybersecurity at Deloitte. Was kind of slowly realizing how much sport did for me, and how much I needed from sport, like the community, the physical aspect, even the skills that I learned. And as I was going through Deloitte, kind of like realized that I wasn't going to be the technical person that sometimes cybersecurity requires you to be. Was more interested on like the human aspect of cybersecurity. Is this like massive problem that every executive and board knew was a problem, but didn't really know how to solve or communicate around. So kind of dove headfirst into that side of it, the human side. Took a few different positions at Deloitte. Some in sales, some within cyber. And as I was going through that, just this deeper interest, kind of thinking about why people do what they do with their time, became more prevalent. So joining this master's program at the University of Pennsylvania almost 2 years ago, really just exploring that thought process, like thinking about why we do what we do at work, and how to help people go from good to great. So as I was having those conversations, a lot of similar ones as what we've been having, like those deep, nitty-gritty, vulnerable conversations, I kept on going back to that time when I lost sport, and how I didn't really prioritize having those vulnerable conversations as soon as I left sport, and wish I had. So kind of like opened up the floodgates into that interest, and just started talking to people about it and their experiences. It's up to 368 different folks, different Olympians, different college athletes, different pro athletes, and even some youth sports practitioners. And then thinking about all the different communities that serve those athletes and former athletes. And been super interesting, so much fun. Everybody I talk to has a different story with sport and with transition, right? And similar to what you were just saying, I think a lot of folks can use this reflection and time in their lives intentionally with some of these conversations. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So a lot to unpack there, Ed. I mean, I know the basis of what we're trying to get across is that there is a shift in your mindset, in your life, and just in your identity when you go from playing a sport specifically to not anymore. Right now, what I was thinking of when you were telling your story again was how busy you had to have been and where your focus was along the way. I mean, you mentioned you played Division I lacrosse at Notre Dame, right? That is a full-time job in itself. You went right into working at Deloitte after college, right? You're doing all of these things, and it's occupying up your time, your mind, your energy, all of those things. When did it kind of hit you that like all of these things that you're working on right now about your identity shift, the transition out of sport, like when did that mindset shift like sink in the midst of all this hard work?
Yeah, I think a big shift in the perspective for me was like in sports, you're always busy, but you're told where to show up, how to work, where you need to go next. The structure of your day is kind of set up for you, right? Like you have class, you have practice, you have a workout, you have a meal. In the real world and at Deloitte, you kind of had to do a lot of that on your own. You had to build new goals. You had to really see what your new like national championship was. And it's not super obvious, right? Like you can do anything outside of sport. Like once you leave the confines of not only the field, but the team, the university, like you kind of can choose any direction you want. And that can be kind of limiting in ways, right? Or debilitating in ways because there's so much out there. And I got caught up in that at Deloitte where like I was just trying to be good at anything, you know, like I was working 60-hour weeks just because I thought that was the way you're supposed to do it. You know, you're supposed to just stay busy. But it didn't have that overall arching narrative that sport gives you. Like all of this is in pursuit of some higher purpose, right? Like I was just moving to move. I wasn't actually thinking about what the national championship was for how I was moving or how I was working.
Huh. Okay, so when you were playing lacrosse, obviously the overarching goal was to win a national championship. But when you got into the professional world at Deloitte, you were saying like you're just being busy for busy's sake, and did you not have your aims on anything, or how was that set up?
Yeah, like I don't think I did enough reflection on like what the new national championship would be for me, you know, like I just assumed that would be kind of told for me in the corporate world, like this is what you got to do, this is the bigger purpose for all the reasons you're working hard. So like I think I needed to do that myself more, like put in a reflection of what that higher purpose, like future calling really would be, instead of just like working it for working's sake kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think it's funny you said this because we hadn't touched on this point in our previous conversations, but the concept of when you're playing a sport or you're in school, it's kind of like laid out for you. It's like, here's where I need you to be. These are the things that I need you to do. And then it's up to you to just execute on a high level. Whereas afterwards, the world is your oyster, right? Whether it's within a company or for me, like I started my business and there is no one to tell me what to do or how to do it or like the steps to take. I mean, there's great mentors out there. You can read books. You can learn from others. You can pay for coaching. But even then, it's still up to you to execute. So I found that in my experience, I would say to mentors and other coaches and people, and I'd say, look, I just need you to give me like the 5 things that I need to do every day, and I will crush it. Don't you worry. But that is, it's funny you said that. That's something that really was hard for me to embody and to step into because I was just used to just doing what I was told, and now all of a sudden it's up to me. So I'm glad you kind of brought that up because I'm sure a lot of people deal with that.
Yeah. And Sean, I took the same approach in the corporate world where I was like this soldier, this Swiss Army knife, like tell me what you need done and I'm going to figure out how to do that. Which I think is a skill in one way, but gets a little bit tricky when you have to think about your priorities and what's important and what's your values, you know, which I think was the biggest learning curve for me leaving undergraduate. And even something I learned in this master's education, like your values and what's important, there's not like a right answer. Like there's not a right way of doing it. It's something that you need to reflect on specific to you. Like I've taken so many of those personality assessments, right? Like the DISC or the Myers-Briggs or whatever, or StrengthsFinder and stuff like that. And for the longest time, I took those quizzes to try to assume what the right answer was, like what the best answer was, based on like whatever my experiences or expectations or family or whatever, instead of actually thinking about what was unique to me, which I've learned the hard way is like that's the opposite of what those things are supposed to be doing. So that was a big learning curve for me for sure.
Yeah, that's tough, man. I mean, because like there's just a whole nother level of introspection that comes into play when you're thinking those things through, right? Not that you're on surface level situations when you're younger or in sport, but it is kind of like, okay, you can just show up and do what you need to do at a high level. But not only, I heard you say like setting the new national championship, so having that North Star, having that desired outcome, but then also understanding why you're doing it. So before we go down any type of like path on your journey, can you kind of share like what your overarching messages to the world and what you found through this transition from college, from sport into what you're doing now?
Yeah, no, and I think it's similar to what we were just talking about with these assessment tools and thinking about sports as kind of this massive assessment tool for how you operate, right, in times of stress and times of success, and specific to you, right, depending on your sport, the position in your sport, and how you play that sport. Like you learned how to do those things a lot of times from a very young age. Like I started playing lacrosse when I was 5. Like Sean, I know you started playing when you were pretty young. So those types of experiences get kind of like embedded in your brain, like in your bloodstream on how you operate. So really what I'm trying to do is help people reflect on what sport meant to them, unique to their situation and experiences, regardless of success level, and trying to use that in other domains, right? Like I've been trying not to use the words like retirement from sport or transition from sport as much as like a transformation from sport, right? Because I'm really trying to change the narrative like athletes just need to completely start over once they're done with sport and enter a new domain, and instead use what they learned in sport in whatever next chapter there is, right? Because companies like Deloitte like spend a lot of money trying to train their employees on the exact same skill sets that a lot of athletes learn during sport, right? Like resiliency and teamwork and stuff like that, right? Like reading a PowerPoint deck about resiliency is a lot different than getting up after you get slashed in lacrosse or get tackled in football, like you learn that pretty intently from a physical nature. And that brings it to the second thing I'm really trying to do, like helping athletes reconnect with their body after they lose that physical domain of sport, right? Like in other ways. And I think a lot of that comes from the goal setting that you were talking about, like having a new North Star or having a new thing to look forward to, whether it's a physical challenge or not, like just having something in the calendar to keep your body accountable. And then the last thing I'm really trying to emphasize is helping people recreate the communities that they relied on for a long time during sport, right? Like at Notre Dame, I had 50 best friends immediately as soon as I walked on campus, right? That were going to call me out when I was not doing the right thing, not working out as much, eating too much, drinking too much, right? So if you lose that after sport and don't have that community to rely back on, it can be really lonely. It can be really hard to get through on your own. So trying to find the communities in your life that can help replace that same team atmosphere that you had for a long time. Yeah, so that's the basis.
Man, yeah. Those are some deeply rooted pillars, and I love the way that you laid them out. The big one, not the big one, they're all big, but when you were talking about just the concept of you're not like starting over, but realizing that in order to get to the level of sport that you were at, no matter how high you got, there took a level of resiliency, and you learned so many lessons that are applicable to life and to what you're going to be doing after playing a sport, that if you just have a mindset reframe and a shift, then we can get you right back on the playing field, right? Just in this new avenue. So I love that you're taking that approach, because I mean, myself, you, like other athletes that I've talked to, I mean, and you hear it from professional athletes all the time where they stop playing, and all of a sudden they go broke, or they go crazy, or like something dramatic happens in their life, when it seems like you're being that bridge from you're all in on one thing to now let's use exactly the things that you learned, the community that you built, to then flourish in another avenue in life. It's just going to be a slight change. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think your point about hearing how many athletes go broke after 5, 10 years become like a cliche in our media, right? Like there's so many movies and TV shows about the washed up athlete that's now an alcoholic because they didn't know how to tap into this extreme confidence that they had in sport, right? And I think this bridge almost gives like the permission for athletes to use that confidence, right? Like, because a lot of people use sport as an outlet, like a difference from their personality in day-to-day life, right? I just talked to a hockey player that said like how savage of a player he was. Like he wasn't letting anybody in the crease. He was just like ruthless on the ice. But as soon as he got off the ice, he was like this polite mannered guy that wasn't as aggressive. And once he loses hockey, right, and isn't able to use that aggression in a productive way through something in his corporate job or something, it could turn into something not great, right? Like he can use it in his relationships or something that isn't as helpful. So if he's first not able to label how he acts on the ice, and then use that power in a productive way off the ice, then it's kind of a missed opportunity with using that through that mindset reframe. Yeah, so I think it's cool stuff, and I always get a unique answer, right? Like the hockey guy was different from our conversation about your experience with lacrosse, and it's different from the skier that approaches things in a different way. So that's been the most fun for sure.
Yeah. Now I want to touch on the community aspect of it and get your approach or your take on this, because like you said, when you walked on campus, you had 50 best friends, and they're all there to, be great athletes, to have a brotherhood, to work towards a collective goal. And let's say for, someone stepping into a new company, it's not always that same dynamic, right? Like you don't always just walk into a company that you work for or a business and everybody's like friendly, wants to be your pal, wants to, work together. What would you say is like some helpful tips or things that you encourage people to do to rebuild that community aspect?
Yeah, I think it's hard. And I think from the company perspective, it's not always valuable to try to recreate that connection with your coworkers. Like that's not always the right place. They're not always in it for the same reasons you are. They're not in the same perspective as you are. So I think that's really hard. And I think first evaluating the people around you is a good way to get started, and finding the communities that are already built that you resonate with, right? And I think that starts with the first pillar, right? Like really identifying your values and what's important to you, and then finding other people that resonate with those same values, right? And I think sometimes that comes from your connection to your faith. Sometimes that comes from your connection to your body with your gym communities. I'm wearing this, the Post hat. I don't know if we talked about this, Sean, but this is a community of all former athletes that are now in the corporate world. And it's been really helpful for me. Like it's all people that you have like an immediate unspoken respect for because they played athletics at a higher level, right? And they went through some adversity and worked hard to get to where they're at. And then you're able to just have some of these deeper conversations because they've been through some similar things as you. So I think starting with that, like your values, what's important to you, and then finding those communities that relate to those same values, I think is a good starting point.
That's huge, man. And I think what I heard you say was understanding that it's not always going to be like a large group of people at first, right? It might not be a group of 50 people at your business or at your work that are going to be on your team. You might just find one person, and that's okay, right? It doesn't have to be a large community. And then the fact of the matter is we're all so interconnected through the internet in a good way to do some research, and you might find that there is, like you said, like the Post, like that's a group of like-minded individuals or people who've been through similar scenarios that you can dive headfirst into and kind of find your tribe that way. So, being able to have it just be one person and also doing the research to find a larger community of people. So that's huge, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes it's obvious, right? Like finding that one person that you're like, I connect with that person. But unless you've done that deeper work of finding like what like-minded even really means to you, it becomes so circumstantial, right? Like if you're not certain of what your mind is like, you can't really find what other people are like that as well. So I think that goes back to some of this deeper work of that self-awareness piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Now these are three huge like pillars and give people structure towards moving, in the direction of maybe feeling lonely or like they lost their identity or they just need some direction. Where would you say, like, when you were in this transition, before you've come up with this philosophy and the pillars, like, what was your biggest struggle going from playing sport to, not having that direction anymore?
Yeah, no, I think for me, I think I had this like blind faith in leaders and teammates that I learned in sport, right? Like you always think your coach is trying to help you win a national championship. Your teammates are also trying to do that. And in the corporate world, it hit me that like not every boss is is like in it for your best interest. Not every coworker is trying to help you succeed, and that's a harsh reality. And you want to stay positive and think everybody's in it for your best interest, but that's not always the case, and I learned that the hard way, that some of my initial bosses had not had my best interest in mind, and I had to vouch for myself, and I needed to learn how to get through that. How about you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was trying to reflect on this the other day when I knew we were gonna do this call, and I think it was more so the new national championship or the new goal to be set. So when I was playing sports, when I was playing lacrosse specifically, like I had my goal in mind, and it seemed so like tangible and achievable, even though it was hard. Then when that happened, it kind of happened so fast that afterwards I hadn't thought that far. I wasn't thinking about a business or a career or a family. Like none of that stuff was even on my radar. So I just had to grab onto the next like tangible thing, and that was literally just completing college with the best grades that I could, like getting myself to that next step, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think I had a similar kind of experience. Like all I wanted to do was play lacrosse in the D1 level and win a national championship, right? So maybe we could talk a little bit more about that, like obsessiveness, and if that was useful, or if there's ways to still have that obsessiveness but not get hit with the cliff afterwards as much. Like do you think that was helpful for you, like having that all in mindset kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think there's a dichotomy to it in a sense, right? Like because you've shared with me how there can be leadership, there can be acknowledgement of like stepping out of sport and stepping out of the obsession and understanding that there is other things in the world. I think you need that. But I think in order to become, let's say in your sake, a D1 national championship contender, like if you want to be the best of the best, there's a reason why the data is the way it is, right? What's it like? 9% of people don't do that, or like 98%, right? Like there's a reason for that. So in order to achieve such a high level at a sport or at anything in life, really, you have to do it at almost an obsessive amount, right? You need to be able to practice smarter and more than other people. You need to be thinking about it and visualize where you want to get to. So to me, yes, I do believe there has to be some level of obsessiveness in order to achieve that, or else you won't do what's necessary to get there. And when I say obsessive, I don't mean it in a negative, like self-harming way. I just mean it like you need to be thinking about that more than you need to be thinking about other things, and that's just the truth.
Yeah, and I wonder if that was a reason why, like, you and I both had that thought process, like, I'll figure out a wife and a job and everything else after we've gotten through that, like that we've gotten through that way to the top, becoming the best of the best, practicing more, visualizing more about the sport. And I wonder if there's a way to do both, or if there's a way to be that present in other domains at the same time, or if those other domains are helpful to visualize, right? Like even like to visualize, you need to know about other things, right? You need to know about meditation and stuff like that to do it better, you know?
Well, to draw a connection to like kind of what I do in the health and fitness space, I look at it like this, right? Like if you want to be the best parent that you can be in the world, you should probably be in good health, right? So like your fitness and your health and your nutrition should be a priority in order for you to then become the best parent or the best husband or wife. So when it comes to sport, I think maybe it just comes down to having the awareness or the coaching that that's a possibility. I didn't really ever have anyone saying, hey, Sean, if you want to be the best athlete, you should also really dial in your relationships, and you should also really dial in your eating and all of those other things, or else you're not going to be able to be the best that you can be, right? So it's just maybe the awareness and the coaching to do that. And I guess that maybe it was available to me and I didn't see it, but that was never on my radar.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot lately too. Like if there were other people telling me about this awareness of other things and I was just so like pigeonholed into this that I just didn't hear anything. Like anytime an athlete hears the word retirement or like next phases, you immediately don't hear it, right? Like especially in college, if you're a sophomore in college, thinking about what you're going to be doing when you're 22 years old after college in 3+ years, it seems like a lifetime away, you know, like that doesn't seem like anything that's happening to you in the current moment. So it's so easy to just deflect that into a future self's problem. You know what I mean? So I've been trying to think of the language that hits now, right? And that can help now. And I think a lot of what you're talking about can help in any situation, like whether you're a sophomore or senior, 55 years old, reflecting on your time in sport, right? Like this awareness of things that can help you be a better person is bigger, like a higher level than being a better athlete, right? Like being a better person applies to all these different goals, being a better athlete being one of them. So yeah, I don't know what language would necessarily hit while you're in it, like in the gridiron, but I think it's definitely helpful regardless. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And something that I was thinking about is everything takes your time and attention. So maybe if you're so hyper focused on a certain goal, and like you said, maybe someone brought it up to you about the concept of having other focuses, you you weighed that out in your mind and said, well, I could I could focus a little bit on this, but I would rather be practicing my stick handling or reviewing game tape. You know what I mean? It's like maybe you thought I could do this, but my time is better served towards my goal that is right now, and that is not going to help me, which is why I love the analogy of health and fitness, because I truly believe that does catapult your life in all other areas. So for me, it's easy to say like, hey, you know, if you want to be a better mom, you should focus on yourself and get your nutrition in check and make sure you're sleeping better, because you're going to show up for those people. But when it comes to sport, I guess maybe I'm just relating sport to career, and it's hard to say, well, you know, Ed, if you really like do your research and look up which career you want to have, like that doesn't correlate as easily to dominating in a sport, if that makes sense. Like that's just the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah, and I think an added difficulty to this is that we live in the United States where you have to pack your schedule from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, right? Especially as a college or pro or Olympic athlete, like you need to be working on your stick work. You need to be looking at film in any free second that you have to breathe. So we don't have a lot of this time to reflect on like what being a good person or being a good mom or whatever really is, because we're kind of under this narrative that we need to pack our schedules as tightly as possible and do as much as possible, instead of having this time to reflect on what's important to you or what these other domains can maybe help you with. And I think that additional layer is a lot harder to do than like just getting staffed in any industry, right? Like going to your job example, like I think there's a lot of people out there that can just get your butt in a seat in any industry. But doing this upfront work on thinking about what that even means for you, or why you might be good there, or what value you can provide that industry based on your experiences so far, or what things they might value in your own approach. I think that's a lot harder to do, especially when you have no time, which nobody does, right, these days. So yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate at how we've been bred to think, right, in America, like the hustle culture, like you need to be working 25 hours a day and no rest days and all that stuff. And I think there's an extent to which that's helpful, but sometimes it gets pushed a little too far. So I want to ask you, though, like obviously you've been communicating with some very high-level athletes, some Olympians and some professional athletes and, D1 college athletes. That right there, in order to get to D1, there's a very small amount of people who do it. But then to get to the next level, like the Olympics and so forth, are even smaller. For the people, the 98 or 99% of people who don't make it to that level, what do you typically see happens in that transition if they don't have your guidance?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is like thinking you were the 2% or the 0.02%, and you could have been that 0.02% if only you didn't get hurt, or if only circumstances changed, if only you had a coach that saw your potential. Like I think that's the hardest realization for folks to have, that you could have done more. And that's like a power that every athlete is instilled with, right? Like in order to become the 0.02%, you have to believe you're the 0.02%, right? So it's such an interesting paradox when you're the gross majority and you had thought you were the 0.02% for most of your life. And when that doesn't happen, it's a really hard thing to make peace with. So I think instead of you seeing that as a negative, seeing that as a positive for getting to where you did, and really acknowledging the things that you did instead of some future potentiality that didn't happen, I think that gives you a lot of confidence in and of itself, right? Like for me, like I went to Notre Dame, like I didn't play as much as I wish I could have. I didn't provide as much value as I could have. One of my good friends, Matt Kavanaugh, was one of the best lacrosse players to ever live. So I was constantly comparing myself to him instead of appreciating the fact that I got to a D1 institution that was pretty good, that made it to a national championship one year I was there. So I never even really acknowledged that was a positive, because I was comparing to this massively successful individual for most of my career. Yeah, so it was really hard.
So, okay, so you're saying that happens in a lot of people who transition out of sport, and then it's like, if I didn't get hurt, if I had that coach, if I had this scenario, then I could have been, said outcome, whatever that might be.
And I think it's never ending, like you see the Tom Brady's of the world and the Michael Phelps of the world. Michael Phelps, however many like gajillion gold medals he won, he still thinks he could have won more. Tom Brady, whatever 7 or however many world championships he won, like that, like he thinks he could have done more. So much so that he kind of altered his life with his family, thinking that he could have won more.
Yeah.
And now some people say that's a success story, him coming out of retirement, but obviously a lot of negative came out of it as well.
Yeah, that's a hard line to walk, right? Because like we were talking about with the obsessiveness, like you have to believe that you can do those things, and maybe if he didn't have that mindset, Tom Brady wouldn't have 7 Super Bowls. But a book and a phrase that I've come to like is The Gap versus the Gain. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
I have it right here.
It's No Way.
Yeah, right
here. Yeah. Great book, and obviously you understand the concept, but I think what you were talking about is a lot of people being in the gap, and I've caught myself there way too much because, like you said, it's like, all right, to most people, they're like, whoa, like, he played D1 lacrosse at Notre Dame, and you're over here like, oh my gosh, I'll never be as good as Matt. Like, why is he so good? Like, how much more do I need to practice in order to get there? And so I think it's just, you have to be somewhere in the middle of saying, okay, what is my potential? What am I striving for? But also look back down the mountain and be like, hey man, like you're doing great. It's just like, keep taking that next step forward. So it's like being grateful for the progress that you've made and the person that you've become, while still having that ability to strive for more, I think is really powerful.
Yeah. 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 I think it's a really interesting paradox. And I think it does start with that gratefulness, right? And that's even a skill in and of itself, like that you can do every day. Like I try to do that every day, like, right, some things that I'm grateful for, some things I'm anxious about, some wins that I've had. Like I do that every day after reading some ancient texts. So I think even doing that is not something that's just like happens overnight. You can't just say like, I'm going to be a grateful person, and then in the next minute you're a grateful person. Like that's the same thing as learning how to shoot a step down in lacrosse, or learning how to be a pulling guard. You know, like that takes a lot of dedication and a big habit to become a grateful person, and helps bridge that gap, like you were saying. And I think that reminded me of like these liminal spaces that we're in a lot, going back to some of the earlier conversation, where we're no longer our previous identity and we're not yet our future identity, right? So like a retiring lacrosse player, well, as soon as you retire, you're not yet your next person. You need to work on your new identity, and you're no longer a lacrosse player because you're not competing on the field. So you're in this weird like middle gray area between both of those identities. And it starts, I think, with what you're saying, like building these habits, these like daily rituals to find something that you're interested in, to get your wheels on the right tracks and things like that.
Yeah. So I know we talked about, your 3 pillars and your approach and kind of your story. What medium do you hope to help people through this, right? Like how are you envisioning that athletes and people transitioning out of sport can then be guided and have the mentorship necessary so that they don't fall into that negative mindset, and they can then parlay their success into further success?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of changing my strategy on that, on answering that question. Like initially, like I just tried to do it myself for a long time, like talk to as many people as I can. Like I said, talk with almost 400 folks about it and try to make a difference that way. But quickly saw like that was not scalable at all. Me just one-on-one reaching out, having these conversations, helping like in a coaching capacity. So I've recently changed my strategy to creating more of a scalable curriculum using like different tools. Like we've been talking for 45 minutes and we haven't said artificial intelligence yet. So thinking about how to leverage those technologies in this type of practice so people can do it on their own, but also trying to change the narrative and help the sports organizations prioritize these types of conversations while you're competing, so you don't get punched in the face or you don't fall off the cliff when you retire. So I think a lot of organizations are doing some pretty good work on figuring out this problem and helping folks through this problem. I think the NFL probably does the best of the different pro leagues. But there's just so much change in sports the past few years at the college level. These new niche leagues like the Premier Lacrosse League, I think, is starting to take a lot better care of their players. So I think like starting with those organizations and helping them build programs and reflection points for their athletes to think about this earlier, so it doesn't feel like as hard of a fall afterwards. I think that's like my long-term plan. Hopefully I'll be able to figure out how to do that with those organizations.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and it seems in alignment too, because instead of saying, okay, I'm going to round up as many ex-athletes as I can and talk to them and hopefully get them on a right mindset, it's like, well, let's heal this at the root, right? Let's go to the leagues. Let's go to the schools that are having these sports and these athletes and have them implement it into their systems so that, like you said, like you start having that conversation and having that approach before you're even done. I think that's actually smart. Like you said, as far as being scalable and helping the most people, I think that is an approach that allows you to have a bigger impact without you just manually talking to people. Like if we're talking about folks who are maybe have an addiction, right? Like instead of going to people who have an addiction and trying to help them, although they should be helped, it's like, how can we stop this problem before it even got that bad? So I feel like that's a good idea.
Well, and to your point, like, and really healing this at the root of the root, thinking about how our youth sports programs are handled and how we're developing these like narratives, this obsessive narrative in our minds when we're like children, when our brains are really just starting to form. And I think there's companies that are really trying to figure out how to solve that problem. Like you think here, Greg Olson in Charlotte has a lot of really great content on how to help kids and parents and using sport in this way that we know it can be, like a leadership development program. But even at that level, there's a lot of change in the past few years, right? Like private equity is getting a lot more involved. There's these like huge national brands that are kind of craving some return, which is scary when the return is related to the success of a 7-year-old kid. But at the same time, like that could be a positive where it creates these processes and you have people like Greg Olson leading the helm on what you can do. So it's not as hurtful for the 7-year-old kid. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of cool changes. Yeah. Go.
I was just going to say, I think that's an important distinction because private equity a lot of times is just looking at the numbers and how can they be as profitable as possible. But if you also have those systems in place where it's showing children how sports are related to all areas of life and leadership and community and building that from the time that they're 7, like people can still make their money and all by running the leagues. But if the system is in place for the kids to be in the right frame of mind, then that's a win-win, I think.
Yeah, and if like we can help change the narrative of these PE firms looking at a bigger return, right? Like not the return of a 7-year-old's game this one time, thinking about this being a leadership development program for that kid in 30 years when he's an executive at the same company the private equity firm backed as well, right? Like that's a huge talent pool that is a lot bigger of a return than this one kid's game that maybe created like a few $100s of ticket sales, like if that's even a thing, or whatever the scenario is, Yeah.
Wow, that's you know what? That's another good point that you just brought up. It's like if they are looking at long-term growth for themselves, understanding that not everyone's going to be LeBron James and they're going to have to come work for your company at some point, so might as well have people have the right mindset and structure in place that they're going to be better off in the long run, not only for themselves mentally, but they're going to be better, teammates, employees. They're going to be better entrepreneurs, and that only helps the collective,
Yeah. And if the athlete and parent of the athlete sees that company investing in their kid that intentionally, where they want them to have this great job for this company based on what they learned as an athlete, like they're so much more likely to invest everything they have into making that company successful, right? Instead of it being some faceless organization they don't care about, right? Like if they had this investment from this bigger company, they're way more likely to be a great employee for them and want to be a great employee for them. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it, man. I think what you're doing, I don't know if you've ever realized this, but it's big work and it's got such a domino effect that it impacts the whole entire world. So if no one's ever said this, I hope that like when you take each day and take each meeting and take these steps towards implementing these processes and bringing more awareness, I hope you know that it's bigger than just athletes too. Got the potential to change like our whole entire world, That's the way I'm seeing it.
I appreciate that, Sean. It's a roller coaster sometimes, especially when you're doing something on your own, like leaving big business. It's a roller coaster sometimes. So, yeah, trying to keep that perspective in mind that this is something that's big and affecting a lot of people, and going back to just the retirement community, like 100,000 athletes retire every year across high school, college, pro, and the Olympics. Like that's a lot of people that are struggling with this every single year. So just trying to help in ways I can, for sure.
Well, so, to whoever's listening to this, they may have been an athlete themselves. They could be a mother to children who have athletes or who are athletes or grandparents. Somehow, some way, you're connected to an athlete. And this mindset is happening in their life. What would you say to someone listening that they can just bring more awareness or a conversation that they can have before it gets to a point of regret or being lost, right? What's something that they could have as a conversation?
Yeah, I think for the parent, just like really like the stepping in someone else's shoes is almost a cliche at this point, but really trying to see it through their eyes and how they're living through this sport and their preferences and what's unique to them. Like, I think that's the biggest work that needs to be done, and just being able to have that 10,000 foot view, objective view of like what's happening in your life, and not really like applying these judgments on your kid or yourself as an athlete, right? Because like we were saying before, like I had all these judgments comparing myself to other players instead of just seeing the objective reality of where I was and how I was competing and the education I was getting. Because maybe I would have appreciated it a little bit more, or maybe I would have taken the class that I was actually interested in instead of the class that was easy that would get me through school, you know. I think being able to take that 10,000 foot view is really hard, especially when you're busy and you need to get the next promotion and you need to get on the get playing time, you know. So taking that step out, I think, is probably the best first piece.
I love it. And you touched on it a little bit earlier, but I did want to expand a little bit. How do you foresee AI being a part of helping this mission here?
Yeah, I think it's powerful. I think, like, very worst case, it gives people language on getting that bigger perspective, or language on what makes them uniquely different. Because having these conversations is really difficult, you know, like talking with a stranger about your vulnerabilities and a really hard time in your life is difficult to do. So I think AI actually can be that initial starting point to get the ball rolling, to helping you thinking about these things intentionally and in a conversational way, right? Like them giving you feedback specific to you based on the data that you've provided them. So I think it's really great for a starting point. I think there'll still be that human conversation necessary, you know, and you're going to have to eventually get that courage to talk to somebody about this in real life and not over just like a chat. So I think having that connection is really helpful, but it gives people the confidence and the language, most importantly, to have those conversations. So I think that'll be a big part of it.
Okay, so more of like a filter in which you could put your scenario to and get some unemotional feedback to help you kind of work through it. And I mean, I'll be honest, I've done that before where I put in a scenario to ChatGPT because I was up in my head about it and kind of like having some anxiety about the decision, and that really laid out what was going on in my life. Because when you feed AI some of your information, it kind of, you know, it remembers all that, and it's just a mirror of you. So I think that's a great idea. Like as like a first line of defense, right? If you're not ready to have that conversation, to just get some clarity to what you're thinking, what you're internalizing, and having a step forward.
Yeah. Well, and Sean, my ChatGPT algorithm knows me better than anybody, like you said, like because I've laid out a lot of this for me, and I think it's really interesting because it's not a robotic response, you know, like I think it does give you that objective view, but it also is supportive, or it can have a voice like my own, right? Like I can feed it my philosophy to respond to an athlete that's retiring, right? And talk in my language and what I think is important. And then be able to converse with the individual without me even being there. So going back to the scalability of this, like, it can help all 100,000 athletes that are retiring in the way that I want to do it before me even being in the room. So I think that's exciting.
That's powerful stuff, man. That is super powerful. So Ed, before we wrap up here, what is there a message that you'd like to share with the audience before we kind of like give them access into your world and how they can get in touch and things like that? Like if there's someone listening right now who needs to hear something.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like you've learned a lot in your life, like regardless of if you were an athlete or not, like some things happen to you that you're able to learn from if you can use it productively and if you can reflect on it. So I'd say like specific to athletes, like there are things that you've done that make you very different. Like that not everybody in the world gets to learn as intentionally as you do. So hopefully that like gives you confidence to be able to do whatever you need to do or whatever you want to do, knowing that you have these skills that, again, like companies are spending millions of dollars trying to train the rest of the population on. So definitely think it's a unique opportunity for athletes to really leverage and reflect on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, selfishly, I think I needed to hear that. So I
Yeah,
know it
man.
will resonate with other people for sure. And man, I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I don't want to hold you here too long. If in case people are interested and they want to learn more about you and your mission and really how they can make an impact in this, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I've been trying to start to put more content on there, just Ed Lubowicki. But like I have a website built out, Lubowicki Performance Advisory.com. I'm starting to build out more of this content and leveraging some tools like AI. So more to come there. But yeah, definitely want to help as many people as I can and build some of these communities to help figure this problem out and help people get this confidence. So yeah, Lubowicki, Lubowicki. That's a tough last name.
Yeah, no worries. I will. I'll be sure to link that stuff in the show notes so people don't have to rewind or write anything out. They can just click right in the link
Yeah.
and get some more information on this. And I always say this, guys, but I want to remind you that this episode might not just have been for you. If anything that we said, resonated with you, and there's someone in your life who could be dealing with this scenario, please share this with them, right? Maybe the message that we talked about might help your son or your cousin or your brother or sister who has been going through this, and they don't have to just be leaving a sport right now. They could have played a sport when they were younger, and they still maybe are dealing with certain things. So share this with them, anyone you love and care about, because this message needs to get out there to as many people as we can. So yeah,
Awesome.
Ed, it's been great, man. I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to possibly having you on again as you evolve in this mission.
Yeah, for sure, Sean. And really quick, like supporting you supported me through the stuff I'm doing. The stuff you're doing is definitely making a big impact. So congratulations with what you're doing. 100 plus episodes. That's awesome. I know all your clients are really appreciative of the work you're doing. So great job.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you, bro.
Hey, thanks for spending some time with me on today's episode. I hope you got a ton of value from it. If we're not connected on Instagram yet, let's change that. Hit me up at Sean Calhoun _. That's SEAN Calhoun _. Shoot me a DM. Let me know what you think of the show or if you got any questions about how to level up your health. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you on the next episode.